Today I'm just doing a special past paper walkthrough for Pure Mathematics P1. I know many of you guys are taking the P1 examinations in Jan and May, June, so hopefully this video can help you all in order to solve certain type of questions. By the way, this is a Pearson Edexcel International Advanced Subsidiary, so that means this is an AS level paper for Monday, 11 January 2021 with the code WMA11/01. This is going to be a 1 hour 30 minutes paper. By the way, time codes will be in the description box below so that you guys can skip to any questions you guys like. And yeah, if you guys have enjoyed the video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. And let's start with the video. All right. So the total marks for this paper is roughly about 75 marks. Do use black ink or ballpoint pen. But it's very critical that you guys use black font in this case for the exam. So okay, any advice? Okay, a mathematical formula and statistics tables will be provided. All right, let's move on to the first question. Now, the first question is a curve has equation y is equivalent to 2x raised to the power 3 minus 5, x raised to the power 2 minus 3 divided by 2x plus 7. X should be greater than 0. We have to find in simplest form dy over dx. So the first part, what we're going to do is we're going to write down the same equation over here so that we can see it clearly. It's very important that you guys write this down. So 2x raised to the power 3 minus 5x squared minus 3 divided by 2x plus 7. So now what I would like you guys to do is to simplify this equation. Let's say write all the x's in terms of their powers. So you're going to write y is equivalent to 2x cubed minus 5x squared minus 3 by 2 x raised to the power negative 1. Since we know x is at the bottom, we have to make it on the top, plus 7. Now this is a nice way of writing it down as first. So after this we have to do dy over dx. That's the first important part. Do check out the video on differentiation. I think, yeah, I made a video on that. So to differentiate it, we're going to do 2 brackets 3x raised to the power 3 minus 1. I'm just going to show you the steps so that you guys know how to do it. Minus 5 brackets 2x raised to the power 2 minus 1 minus 3 by 2 negative 1 x raised to the power negative 1, negative 1. You're going to subtract that. Since this is a constant, you're just going to leave it as 0. Now, we have to simplify this, so it's going to become dy over dx. That's going to be equivalent to 2 over 6, 6x raised to the power of 2, minus 10x raised to the power of 1. So you're just going to leave it negative 3 by 2 times negative 1. That's going to become a positive 3 by 2, x raised to the power negative 1 minus negative 1 is going to become x raised to the power negative 2. Now we can simplify this back, so we can write dy over dx is equivalent to 6x squared minus 10x plus 3 divided by 2x raised to the power 2. We just put this x raised to the power negative 2 at the bottom so that we have a nice simplified expression. Alright, so this seems good. Amount of working. Let's move on to the next question. Now the next question is talking about point P lies on the curve and has x coordinate half. So what we're going to do is we're going to write the x coordinate. We know it's half, and we have to find an equation of the normal to the curve at P, giving your answer in the form of ax plus by plus c is equivalent to 0, where a, b, and c are integers to be found. So the first thing I would like you guys to do is to remember that a nice little formula that we can use here is that a gradient, let's say the gradient of a normal is equivalent to negative 1 divided by the gradient of a tangent. So what I mean by that is we're going to use our dy over dx expression from A, and what we're going to do, we're going to substitute the value of x into that equation. So you're going to write dy over dx. Now, the reason why we're substituting the value of x into this equation is because we're trying to find out the gradient of the tangent, so that we can indirectly find out the gradient of the normal, which we can use to find out the equation of the normal itself. So dy over dx is going to be equivalent to 6 brackets half. That's the value of x, which is substituted as into x squared minus 10 brackets half plus 3 divided by 2 brackets half x squared. Now, if you put this in a calculator, by the way, do use a calculator for the exam, you're going to get 5 by 2. This is going to be your dy over dx. We know that the gradient of the tangent is not 5 by 2, but it is the gradient of the curve. Indirectly, the gradient of the tangent to that curve. So we know the gradient of the curve is 5 by 2. Now what you need to do is find out the gradient of the normal. So to find out the gradient of the normal, what we're going to do, the reason why we're finding out the gradient of the normal is because the question's asking us to find out the equation of the normal to the curve at that point. So what we're going to do is to find out the gradient of the normal, you just do -1 divided by 5 by 2. And directly you're going to get a -2 by 5. Now this is going to be your gradient of the normal. So now we know the gradient. Now all we need to do is write it in terms of y equals mx plus c. That's the notation we're supposed to be using in the equation. So I'm just going to write it down here. Y is equivalent to mx plus c. So we know that y is equivalent to -2 divided by 5x plus c, since we have found out the gradient of the normal. Now we have to find out what point c is all about. So when you substitute the value of x into the differentiated equation, you're actually getting the gradient. Now when you substitute the value of x into the equation at the top, you're most likely to get the coordinates of y. So that's the reason why we're going to substitute now the value of x into the top equation. So the top equation is y is equivalent to 2x raised to the power 3 minus 5x raised to the power 2 minus 3 divided by 2x plus 7. This is the equation at the top. That's the current equation that we're given here as well in the question. And we're going to substitute the value of x given by the question itself to find out the value of y. So when you substitute that, it's going to come y is equivalent to 2 brackets half cubed minus 5 brackets half square minus 3 divided by 2 half plus 7. By the way, do show all your working. It's very important that you guys show the working. So you're going to get y's value as 3. So we know the coordinates indirectly is that when x is equivalent to half, we know y is going to become 3. You can write it down in terms of coordinates, half comma 3. Alright, so now once you do that, we know the coordinates of x and y. We have to find out what c is. We can substitute the value of x and y into this equation. Indirectly, I'm just going to rearrange this as minus 2x plus c is equivalent to y, -2 by 5 brackets half. So indirectly, we're finding out the value of c. So equivalent to 3. Now, when you rearrange all of this, you're most probably to get c's as 16 divided by 5. This is going to be the value of c. All we need to do is now just substitute this into the equation back, which you're going to get y is equivalent to 2 minus 2 divided by 5 x plus 16 divided by 5. And now this is going to be your equation. This is not where we're going to leave it. We have to rearrange it in terms of, let me just reload this system again. So we're going to rearrange it in terms of ax plus by plus c. We have to rearrange the equation in that form. So when you rearrange it, x plus by plus c is equivalent to 0. We are going to rearrange it as -2 by 5x minus y, actually, plus 16 by 5 is equivalent to 0. Now, we cannot leave it as it is currently as well, because we have to multiply some of these values by 5. Now, the reason why we're multiplying this whole equation by 5 is because we have to make this where a, b, and c are integers to be found. So that's why we're multiplying this, let's say, by 5. In this case, we know y's value to be roughly, if you look at it, you're just going to rearrange this, right? So we have to rearrange this carefully so that we get this right. So we're just going to multiply everything by -1 first so that we get it in nice positive integers. So -16 by 5. Now we can multiply everything by 5. So you're going to get 2x, okay, plus 5y minus 16 is equivalent to 0. Now this is a better notation. The reason why I multiplied it by -1 at first, because I just wanted to get rid of the negative sign. And we have to make this into whole numbers, so we get 2x plus 5y minus 16. We know a is 2, b is 5, c is -16. You can just write it down, it's just your choice, but this is going to be your final answer for that question. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Okay, the next question is more worded. Okay, so a tree was planted exactly 3 years after it was planted. The height of the tree was 2 meters. Exactly 5 years after it was planted, the height of the tree was 2.4 meters. Given that the height, meters of the tree, 2 years after it was planted can be modeled by the equation h raised to the power 3 equivalent to pt raised to the power 2 plus q, where p and q are constants. A. Find to 3 significant figures where necessary the value of p and the value of q. Alright, so we're given the equation. We're just going to write down the equation at first. H raised to the power 3 is equivalent to pt squared plus q. So now what you need to do is we're going to substitute some of the values. We know that the height of the tree was 2 meters, and we know the timing as well. We know that h is meters, the height, and we know that t is the time in years. So technically we can use these values. We know that this is the time. Well, let's say the time in years. So we're going to substitute this. We're going to rearrange it. We know height is 2 meters. So we're going to write 2 raised to the power 3 is equivalent to p times time, which is given 3 years, 3 square, plus q. Now once you do that, we know that you have to simplify this. So I'm just going to rearrange this again. 2 raised to the power 3 is going to become 8 equivalent to 3 raised to the power 2. That's going to put this in brackets since we have to multiply that. That's going to become 9p plus q. Now we're just going to rearrange this. 9p plus q is equivalent to 8. We're just making a nice notation form for us to write it. And now we're just going to repeat the same process again for exactly 5 years now. So it's going to become using the same equation, by the way. So I'm just going to write it down here again. So this time the height was 2.4. So 2.4 raised to the power 3 is equivalent to p times time is 5 years in this case. So 5 squared plus q. That's going to give us 5 times 5. 2.4 raised to the power 3 is going to become 13.824 is equivalent to 25p plus q. Now we're just going to rearrange this again. 25p plus q is equivalent to 13.824. By the way, do use your calculator. So now we get 2 equations. Now we can solve both of these equations using the simultaneous technique, either through substitution or elimination. It depends on what you guys choose. I'm just going to use let's say elimination in this case, but I think substitution would be the preferred choice, what everybody chooses in terms of complex equations. But it really depends on what your choice is. So indirectly we're going to be choosing, let's say, substitution. Okay, so 9p plus q is equivalent to 8. So what are you going to do? This is going to rearrange this in terms of p. So going to be 9p is equivalent to 8 minus q. P is equivalent to 8 minus q divided by 9. So now we have the value of p. Now all we need to do is just substitute it into this equation, into the equation above here. So we have 25 times 8 minus q divided by 9 plus q is equivalent to 13.824. So once you do that, what we're going to do is we have to 824. We're going to simplify it. We're just going to open up all the brackets up, and once you open that brackets up, you're going to get a value of about, roughly your equation is all going to simplify to negative 16q is equivalent to negative 75.584. So I'm not going to show all those steps of factorizing and let's say all that steps of rearranging and solving. You guys should be knowing that. So q is equivalent to negative 75.584 divided by negative 16. The negatives cancel out, and you're going to get q as 4.724. This is going to be the value of q. Now all we need to do is substitute the value of q back into the equation of p. It's 8 minus 4.724 divided by 9. By the way, do write all the values in decimals, accuracy in decimals. 0.364. This is all for just a itself. And the answer for finding out what the value of p and q is, that's going to be, let's say, here we know what p is. So p is equivalent to 0.364, and we know q is equivalent to 4.72. All up to, we're going to mention that all up to 3SF. Okay, 3SF just means 3 significant figures. Alright, let's solve question B. Now question B is exactly 2 years after the tree was planted. Its height was 5 meters. Find the value of t according to the model, giving your answer to 1 decimal place. So the height was given. We know that the height was 5 raised to the power of 3. We know the value of p and t. All we need to do is just rearrange this equation. We know the values of p and q as well, so h raised to the power of 3 is equivalent to pt squared plus q. This is the equation given in the question. We know the values of p and q, and we know the value of the height. The height in the question was 5 meters, so all we need to do is just basic substitution. 5 raised to the power of 3 is equivalent to t squared times 0.364 plus 4.72. Once you do that, you're going to rearrange all of this equations into 0.364 t squared. That's going to be equivalent to 125 minus 4.72. Since 5 raised to the power of 3 is 125, t is going to become equivalent to the square root. I'm just simplifying all of this equation, by the way, guys, so it's much simpler for us to understand. 120.28 divided by 0.364, so t is going to become equivalent to 18.17. Sorry, 18.17. That's the correct way of saying it. Find the value of t in terms of 1 decimal place. Since it's 1 decimal place, t is going to become 18.2. This is going to be answer for about, let's say, 6 marks, both in total A and B. So question 3 states that figure 1 shows a sketch of part of the curve C1 with equation y equals 4 cos of x. The point P and the point Q lie on C1 and are shown in figure 1. So we can see that there's a diagram here. State the coordinates of P and state the coordinates of Q. Now this question is for roughly about 3 marks. So the first thing that we have to do is try to identify what is the information that is given to us. Alright, so we can see that curve C has the equation y equals 4 cos of x. So this 4 means that the y coordinates are multiplied by 4. So we can notice that there will be a rise of about 4 and there will be a decrease of about 4 as well. So we can put that 4 value somewhere around here. So there's a rise of 4 and there's a bottom of 4 in this place. So that's the first step of information that we know. And the other information that we know, that this is a cos graph. So that means the values here is going to cross by 90 degrees. This is going to be 180 degrees. This is going to be 270 degrees. If you look at the cos graph, the original cos graph, it's going to look something like this. It's 360 degrees. And yeah, same thing for the other side, but the other side is just going to become negative 90 degrees, negative 180 degrees, and negative 270 degrees. So these are the values that we have plotted. So now we can somewhat find out the coordinates of these points. So the coordinates of point P that we have to find out, that's here. We already know what our x-axis is and what our y-axis is going to be. So indirectly, we have already found out the answer for the coordinates of point P. So we're going to just write it down here. A1, the coordinates of point P is going to become x values negative 180 degrees, negative 180, comma, negative 4. This is going to be your coordinates for point P since we have plotted all the information down. By the way, these values of 90, 180 are taken from the original cos graph. So that's how we have plotted the values down in this case. So that's the coordinates of point P. Now we have to find out the coordinates of point Q. Now we can see that Q lies on the x-axis. Now Q lies on the x-axis when let's say when the x-coordinate is 0. Sorry guys, it's not when the x-coordinate is 0. It's actually, if you look at it, it's when the y-coordinate is 0. So we know that the y is 0, and we have to find out what the x-coordinate is. So indirectly, we know from the cos graph, if you do 360, let's say plus 90 degrees again, you get an additional of about 450 degrees. So this point here is going to be 450 degrees on the xy plane, on the x coordinates. So indirectly we have found out the coordinates of point Q, which is going to be 450 comma 0, since the value of y is 0 and the x coordinate is about 450. Alright, that's just from the original cos graph itself. Let's move on to the next question. Now the next question B is that the curve C has equation y equals cos of x plus k, where k is a constant. Curve C2 has a minimum y value of -1. The point R is the maximum point on C2 with the smallest positive x coordinate. State the coordinates of R. So we're given information that curve C2 has a minimum y value of -1. So what that means is the y value has moved from, let's say, -4 to -1. So it's going to move up, let's say, by, so if it moved from -4 to -1, so that means there should be an increase of -1 plus 4. That's going to increase by 3. So there's going to be an increase of about 3. So that means let's say, the y coordinate is going to increase by 3. So that's going to mean your y coordinate is going to become 4 plus 3, and indirectly it's going to become 7, since they've given us the minimum y value to be about -1. So we have to see what's the difference of increase in that case. So if you just put -1 plus -1 plus 4, you're going to get positive 3 increase on the top. So indirectly we know what our y coordinate is. It's going to increase by 7. And we know that point R, let's say point R is the maximum point in C2 with the smallest positive x coordinate. So if you look here, what is the maximum, but at the same time, which is the smallest positive x coordinate? So we can see on this graph, the point here, the smallest positive x coordinate could be 360 degrees. So that's why we're going to assume, or let's say we're going to take 360 degrees as the smallest possible maximum x coordinate in this case. So it's going to become 360 comma 7. This is going to be your coordinates for roughly about 2 marks, I think. Yeah, 360 comma 7. All right, let's move on to the next question. Now the next question, okay, so next question is more likely you can see a straight line graph, a quadratic equation. The points P and Q, as shown in figure 2, have coordinates -2 comma 13 and 4 comma -5 respectively. The straight line L passes through P and Q. Find an equation for L, writing your answer in the form y equals mx plus c, where m and c are integers to be found. So we know that y equals mx plus c. Now this is a straight line equation, so we know that indirectly, that since that's a straight line equation, we know that the straight line passes through 2 points. So indirectly we can find out what the gradient is with these 2 coordinates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the coordinates so that we can see it clearly. So -2 comma 13, 4 comma -5. Now I'm just going to use my method of finding out the gradient. You guys can use any method you guys like. So the first step, I would like to list out the coordinates x1 y1, x2 y2, and a nice gradient formula, m, which is standing for gradient, is equivalent to y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. That's going to become equivalent to -5, -13, minus 13, 4, minus 2. So indirectly, if you simplify this, you're going to get -3. So your gradient is going to become -3. Now we have found out the gradient. Now we can write down the straight line equation. Y equals mx plus c. Y is equivalent to -3x plus c. Now, how do we find out the value of c? You just plug in any one coordinate. You can plug in this coordinate or you can plug in this coordinate. It doesn't matter which coordinate you guys plug in, as long as it's either of these two. So I'm just going to use -2 comma 13. In this case, this is going to become x comma y. So we know the y value to be 13 is equivalent to -3 times -2 plus c. So I'm just going to put it in the brackets so that's much easier for you guys to see. So if you rearrange all of this, you're going to get c is going to become equivalent to 13 minus 6, which is going to give us 7. So I'm just going to simplify the process. C is equivalent to 7. Indirectly, you have, I'm just trying to draw the box here. Okay. Indirectly, you have found out the equation. Your final equation is going to be, I'm going to write it down here. Y is equivalent to -3x plus 7. This is going to be your final equation for A itself. That's going to be, yeah, that's going to be equation for A. Let's move on to the next question. By the way, let me check if we have to state anything. Yeah, we have to state where m and c are integers to be found. Thankfully, here they're integers, so m is going to become -3. C is equivalent to 7. Do state that out in case if they ask you. Equation for line L. This is going to be the equation for line L. Alright, let's move on to the next question. B. The quadratic curve passes through P and has a minimum point at Q. So we can see that there's a minimum point at Q. Find an equation for C. So since it passes through point P, we know the coordinates of point P to be roughly -2 comma 13. And we know what Q is as well. So the minimum point of q is most likely to be 4 comma negative 5. Indirectly they're just giving us 2 points already, so we're going to use 4 comma negative 5 since we know the coordinates of q. So the coordinates of q is 4 comma negative 5. That is your x and y value. So your x value in this case is going to become 4 and your y value is negative 5. Since your y value is negative 5, we're going to use something like we have to find out the equation, right? That's what the question's asking us, to find out the quadratic equation. Since it's a quadratic curve, we know that it's going to be in this notation form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equivalent to 0. So now, how do we find out the equation? What we can do is we can use completing the square method. So I'm just going to mention it here so you guys know. We're going to use completing square method. So what that means is we're going to have x minus 4 square negative 5. Since we know the turning point, since this is somewhat of a turning point, we can just plug in the values there. And if we need to find out what's the coordinates here of a, so y is equivalent to a brackets x minus 4. This is going to be your quadratic form notation. Now we're going to use the coordinates of negative 2 comma 13. These are, by the way, the coordinates of p. We're just going to substitute into this equation to find out what a is technically all about. So x comma y. So your y value is going to be 13 is equivalent to a brackets negative 2 minus 4 square root minus 5. If you rearrange all of this, you're going to get a as half. A is going to become half, so indirectly we have found out the completing the square method. So y is equivalent to half brackets x minus 4 square minus 5. This is going to be your equation. By the way, do not leave it like this. What you have to do is now start simplifying this equation. So I'm going to write y is equivalent to half brackets x minus 4 brackets x minus 4. I'm not going to be factorizing this, so all we need to do is just expand this now. The simplified version, I'm just going to write it down. It just becomes y equals half x squared minus 4x plus 3. Once you simplify this, it should become this final quadratic equation. That's the quadratic equation that you guys must write down. This is your final answer that you guys must get when you expand the brackets. Alright, so this seems to be for part B. Part C is that the region R shown is shaded in figure 2, so we can see that there's a region R there, and shown in figure 2, it lies in the second quadrant and is bounded by C and L only. Use the inequalities to define the region R. So we know the equation for the quadratic and we know the equation for the straight line. Indirectly we're going to write both the equations down. So the equation for the straight line, we're going to write that down as well, and the equation of the quadratic. So it's going to be C, so y is equivalent to negative 3x plus 7. That's the equation of the line. Y is equivalent to half x squared minus 4x plus 3. That's the equation of the quadratic. Now we're going to test if this actually lies on a test point. So as long as they do not cross the x-axis, as long as they do not cross the origin point, so that means we can use the test point, let's say 0, 0, to see if it lies on any certain point. So this part is very important that you guys listen to it. So the test point is going to become 0, 0, and it's going to become x, y. So we're going to test out this equation first. So it becomes, let me write it down. Y is equivalent to negative 3x plus 7. 0 is equivalent to negative 3. 0 plus 7. 0 is equivalent to let's say 7. So that means 7 should be greater than 0, so indirectly 0 is less than 7. So since that's your test point, what we have to do is we're going to write down the equation in a way that we can see how this thing works. So it's going to become y. Y should actually be, let's say, greater than negative. Y should be greater than negative 3x plus 7. That's the notation we're going to write first. Now we're going to do the same thing for the quadratic. Since 0 is less than 7, indirectly we know that the value of y should be greater than that. Alright, so let's test for the quadratic. Half x squared minus 4x plus 3. Just do the same thing. Y is equivalent to 0. Half 0 squared minus 4, 0 plus 3. So you should be getting a value of about 0 should be less than 0. Actually, 0 should be equivalent to 3, so 0 indirectly is less than 3. So this means that the value of y should be less than half x squared. So y should be half, or y should be less than half x squared minus 4x plus 3. So this is one of the inequalities. That is one of the inequalities. There's one more inequality that we need to look at, is the inequality where the value is touching, let's say, x equivalent to -2. Now, the reason why we look into that is because we know point P has coordinates -2, 13, where 13 is somewhere roughly here on the y value, -2 should be somewhere around here. So that means that the inequality should be greater. Actually, the inequality should be less than -2, since all the values going towards the left should be less than -2. So indirectly, we have found out the third inequality. You have to write down all three of these inequalities to gain those 2 marks. So x should be less than -2. So our final answer, I'm just going to write it down here. Our final answer, I'm just going to reload the system again so that we can write this answer properly. So the final answer is going to become y is greater than -3x plus 7. That's the first inequality we have found out. Yeah, okay. And then the next inequality, comma, y should be less than half x squared minus 4x plus 3. That's the other inequality we found. And the other inequality is going to become y is less than -2. So these are the 3 inequalities that you got to write down for 2 marks in total. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Okay. Question 5. Alright, so we can see question 5 states that figure 3 shows the planned view of a viewing platform at a tourist site. The shape of the viewing platform consists of a sector ABCOA, of a circle center O joined to a triangle AOD. Now, by the way, important information or important tip, do look at the values given to you. This is mostly going to be some of them are given in radians, the others are given in degrees. Do keep in mind that you have to change the mode on your calculator when dealing with questions related to radians. So all you need to do is just hit that, I think the shift button combined with the mode, and hit 4. That should give you radian mode as well. So now we're just going to keep it as it is in degrees. And we have to find out the size of angle AOD in radians to 3 decimal places. Okay, so first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to label the diagram, of course, so it makes it much easier for us to solve this question when we look at the diagram itself. So OA is equivalent to OC. That means they both are 6 meters long. Okay, that's a good start. We know that AD is 14 meters. Angle ADC, that should be 0.4 rad. Angle AOD is an obtuse angle. OCD is a straight line, so that means all that angles there should be 180 degrees. Okay, so what we need to do is find out the size of angle AOD. So what we're going to do is we're going to just list down all the values given to us. We're just going to draw a separate triangle here. Alright, so we're going to draw a separate triangle with all the values that are given to us. So we know O is here, we know A is there, and we know D is here. So we know OA is equivalent to OC, somewhat around this point here. OC, that's about 6 centimeters. Sorry, 6 meters. And we know that angle ADC is roughly about 0.43 rad. And we know that AD is 14 meters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a notation where you guys can use any form of notation you guys like. In sine rule, I'm just going to write this down as A, B, and C. Where this is A, this is B, this is C. Alright, so we're going to use sine rule in this case. So the sine rule in this case is going to become A divided by sine A, equivalent to C divided by sine C. Now the reason why we're using C divided by sine C is because we have to find out the value of what C is actually. Indirectly, we know the values of C. we can use C's value as 6, somewhat like that, roughly about that guess. And we can just find out what the angle A is all about. So we know A is indirectly 14 divided by sine A is equivalent to C, which is going to become 6, right, divided by sine C, which is 0.43 rad. Once you do that, you're going to rearrange all of this, and you're going to get A is equivalent to sine inverse brackets 14 times sine 0.43. All I'm doing is I'm just rearranging all of this, 6 brackets. A is going to become 1.3365 rad. By the way, do change the calculator mode to radians. Do check out videos on that. How to convert the degree mode into radians. So you're going to get the angle A, or also known as angle AOD, to 3 decimal places. So we're going to write that down. Angle AOD is equivalent to 1.34. Actually, no. Since AOD is an obtuse angle, it's mentioned in the question, we cannot leave it as 1.34. So what we have to do is going to write angle AOD is going to become equivalent to pi minus 1.3365. That's going to give us the correct values in terms of radians, since it's an obtuse angle. So we're going to get roughly about 1.805 radians. Now this is your actual answer for angle AOD. That's going to become 1.805 radians. This is an obtuse angle notation. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Question B. What does question B ask us? Okay, the length of arc ABC in meters to 1 decimal place. So they want us to find out the arc of ABC. That's this portion over here. So we know the length of an arc. Remember, guys, this formula is very important that you guys know this. The length of arc is equivalent to S is equivalent to R theta. And since we have to find out the outward AOC indirectly, we can find out the angle of AOC. We know the angle of AOD to be as 1.805 rad. All we need to do is just do 2 pi. So that means angle AOC is equivalent to 2 pi minus 1.805 to find out what angle C is all about. Sorry, guys. So that's 4.4781 in terms of radians. Alright, so since we found out what angle AOC is, we just need to find out the arc. That's it. So S is equivalent to R, which is 6. So we know one of the sides of AO to be as 6 meters. So all we need to do is just do 6 times 4.478. We're going to get a value of about 26.8686. Just round it off to about 1 decimal place, 26.9. This is going to be our arc length, 26.9 meters to 1 decimal place. Alright, let's move on to question C. Question C is asking us, let me just rub this out, the total area of the viewing platform in meter square. So the total area of the viewing platform is, we have to find out the area of the triangle first. We have to find out the area of this sector over here as well. So we know the formula for the area of sector to be, let's say, the area of sector, I'm just going to mention here, the area of sector to be, area is equivalent to half theta r square. So we know what the angle is. We know that the angle is 4.4781. So area is equivalent to half times 4.4781 times the radians is a 6 square. So this indirectly is going to give us 80.6058. We're just going to round this off to 80.6 meters square. So that's going to be your area for that sector, 80.6 meters square. Then we have to find out the area of this triangle. So we're going to use maybe a bit of some rules of the area when dealing with sine and cosine rules. So we have to find out the area of this triangle over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the triangle again, since it's better for us to draw the triangle again. So we can draw a nice little diagram here. So we know that this is O, this is point C, this is A, and this is D. We know that this is 0.43 rad. We know the angle of AOD now, 1.805 rad. Indirectly, we can find out that this is 6 meters and this is 6 meters, and this is 14 meters. Now what we have to do is area is equivalent to half AB sine C. So if we write the notation again, A, B, and C, this is A, this is B, and this is C. You guys can use any notation you guys like. So we have to find out what A and B are. We know A, and we have to find out what B is. Indirectly, we have to find out what OAD is, that angle over there. So all angles, let's say the total angles in a triangle, they all add up to 180 degrees. But how do you convert 180 degrees into, well, let's say into radians? You just do 180 degrees divided by 180 times pi. Indirectly, you're going to get pi, which is going to become 3.141 C. This is in terms of radians. So it's the total angles in a triangle is going to add up to 3.141 radians. So when you add them all up, you're going to get OAD to be roughly about 3.141 minus 1.805 plus 0.43 to give us 0.906 radians. So that's going to become 0.906 radians. Alright, so we now know the angle of OAD. So now we have to find out what the values are using the formula. So we're going to rearrange this formula a bit. So we're going to have area is equivalent to half AC sine B. We can rearrange the formula in that way. Since we know the angle of B now, we can just use the values of A and C without having to find out the value of B. So we don't need to use that. We just use the values that's given to us easily. So the area is going to become half times A value is 14 times C value, which is 6, times the sine B. We now found out that all the angles in a triangle add up to 3.141 rad. So sine 0.906 radians, all in radian mode, to give you 33.055 meters squared. Now this is the area of that triangle, by the way. This is the area of the triangle to be 33.055 meters square. Now we have to find out the total area of the viewing platform. So all we need to do is just add up the area of the sector. We know the area of the sector to be 80.6, and we just added up 80.6 plus 33.055. We just added up to this. We're going to get a final answer of 113.655 meters square. Since the question is asking us to round it off to approximately 1 decimal place, we're going to write down the total area is going to become 113.7 meters squared. This is going to become your final answer for about total of marks of about 9 marks. Alright, 113.7. Let's move on to the next question. Now, the next question, sketch a curve with equation y equals negative k divided by x. K is greater than 0. X should not be equivalent to 0. On a separate diagram, sketch. So we know if we sketch it, it's just going to become, by the way, just learn these diagrams. Just memorize them, x and y. We know it's just going to become a negative reciprocal slope, so it's going to curve somewhat like this. This is how the graph is going to somewhat look like. Let's move on to the question B. That's how it should look like. Question B is on a separate diagram. Show negative k divided by x plus k, where k should be greater than 0. So what that means is the graph should translate upwards, a little more up, positive 1. So it's going to increase by positive 1. So what I mean by that is you're going to draw again a diagram of y and k. And you're going to write down that equation y is equivalent to negative k divided by x plus k. So this is the equation on the top. Sorry, not on C, on B. And we know that y is equivalent to 0. So we're going to have negative k divided by x plus k is equivalent to 0. Once you do that, negative k divided by x is going to become negative k. Once you multiply negative k, x is equivalent to negative k. X is equivalent to negative k divided by negative k. X is going to become 1. The coordinates is going to become 1, 0. So the graph is translated up by 1. So you can mention that here, y is equivalent to k, and the negative reciprocal is going to somewhat look like this. So we can just draw the asymptotes and mention the coordinates 1, 0. This is going to be answer for about 3 marks. Alright, let's move on to question C. Question C is to find the range of possible values of k for which the curve with equation does not touch or intersect the line with equation y is equivalent to 3x plus 4. So since if it's no intersection, that means there are no real roots, and we know using the discriminant concept, b squared minus 4ac should be less than 0. This is, by the way, for no real roots. This is the equation for no real roots. So what we need to do is we're going to write down all the equations that's given to us in the question. That's y equals 3x plus 4, and we know the other equation to be roughly about y is equivalent to negative k divided by x. Y is equivalent to negative k divided by x plus k. So now, what we need to do is just put these two equivalent to each other. That's it, and rearrange this to get a quadratic equation. Once you put these equivalent, 3x plus 4 is equivalent to negative k divided by x plus k. You're going to rearrange this all to get 3x plus 4 plus k divided by x. Negative k is equivalent to 0. We're just going to multiply everything by x, so that we remove the denominator. So it's going to become 3x squared plus 4x plus k minus kx is equivalent to 0. Once you do that, you're going to rearrange all of these equations to give you 3x squared plus 4. Since actually we're gonna rearrange this to collect all the like terms together. Minus kx plus k is equivalent to 0. Rearrange it and factorize it. 3x squared plus 4 minus k, all in brackets of x, plus k is equivalent to 0. So now we can see we can see that we're forming a quadratic equation in this case. So we can mention it to x squared plus bx plus c is equivalent to 0. We know the value of a to be about 3. The value of b is 4 minus k. The value of c is just k. So we can use the b squared minus 4ac concept less than 0. We know 4 minus k squared minus 4 brackets 3 bracket c is less than 0. Once you expand all of this, you should be getting a new quadratic equation again to be k squared minus 20k plus 16 less than 0. Once you expand all of this, once you simplify it, you should be getting a quadratic equation like this. Just put this in your calculator. By the way, I've made a video how to solve quadratic equations using a calculator. Do check that out. You should be getting your k value to be about 10 plus 2 squared 21, and your other k value to be 10 minus 2 squared 21. Now we're going to write down the inequalities. We just draw a nice little diagram. This is going to be the value in terms of it's going to look like somewhat like this, like an upward curve. So this is 10 minus 2 squared 21. This is 10 plus 2 squared 21. So we all want the bits that's inside of it. So that means that your final answer is going to be 10 minus 21 squared 21 less than k less than 10 plus 2 squared 21. This is going to be your final answer, since that's what the question's asking us, to find the range of possible values of k. Alright, so we have to find out the range of possible values of k, which is going to become this value. This is going to be our answer, actually. Yeah. For about, let's check. For about 10 marks. Alright, let's move on to the next question. Wow. Now the next question, question 7, is more of a differentiation question, so this should be easy for about 9 marks. So you should score this. So solve the equation f of x is equivalent to 9. So all we need to do is just write f of x 2x minus 3 squared x minus 5. Let's write this equation equated to 9, since f of x is equivalent to 9. By the way, the first step that I would advise you all to do is to simplify this. So 2x minus 3x raised to the power half minus 5 minus 9 is equivalent to 0. Once you simplify this, you should be getting 2x minus 3x half minus 14 is equivalent to 0. Now the next step, what we're going to do is we're going to let y is equivalent to x raised to the power of half. Once you do that, we know that 2y squared, if it's squared, this becomes an x itself. So that's why we're writing 2y minus 3y negative 14 is equivalent to 0. Factorize this again, find the values of y. Y is equivalent to 7 by 2, and y2 is equivalent to negative 2. Once you do that, use the equation again, x raised to the power half. We know x is equivalent to y squared. So your x value for 1, that's going to become 7 by 2 squared, which is going to give us a value of 49 divided by 4, and your x2, which is going to become square root of negative 2. But we know that we have to reject this value since the square root of a negative is not possible. So just reject this value here, and we're going to use the value of x to be 49 divided by 4. This is going to be our answer for about 4 marks. Now we have to solve the equation when f is differentiated twice. By the way, when there are 2 dashes, let's say 2 apostrophes on the top, that means that it's differentiated twice. So let's look at the first differentiation. So we're going to write down the equation. We know the equation is f of x is equivalent to 2x minus 3, x raised to the power half, raised to the power half minus 5. This is the first equation. Now let's differentiate it once. So this is, when you differentiate this once, it becomes 2 minus 3 by 2 x raised to the power of negative half. This is a constant, so this is going to eventually cancel out each other. Now we're going to differentiate it again to give us a value of about negative 3 by 2 x. It's going to multiply by negative half, x raised to the power negative half, negative 1. Indirectly, this gives us an equation of 3 by 4 x raised to the power negative 3 by 2. So this is your second differentiated form equation. This is going to be our equation here. And we know the value when this is differentiated twice. We know that differential value is equivalent to 6. So this is the most important part, that you know how to rearrange this. Is 3 by 4 x raised to the power negative 3 by 2 is equivalent to 6. It's multiplied, so that means if it goes on the other side, it becomes x divided by 3 by 4. So that's going to become x raised to the power negative 3 divided by 2 is equivalent to 8. If you multiply 6 times 4, 24. 24 divided by 3, that should give you a value of 8. Yeah. Now, what do you do after this? The first step is you're going to multiply everything by negative 1. Let's say the powers. You're going to multiply the powers by negative 1. So you get x raised to the power of, let's say, 3 by 2 is equivalent to 1 by 8. Now you're going to multiply all the powers by 2 by 3, since you want to cancel out this power over here. So when you multiply the power over there, 3 by 2 times 2 by 3, and the power of 1 by 8 to raise to the power of 2 by 3, indirectly this is going to cancel out each other. So you're going to get x is equivalent to this 1 brackets 1 by 8 raised to the power of 2 over 3. That's going to give you a value of about quarter. So that's going to become 4. So indirectly you have found out the x value to be about quarters. So that's going to be answer for about 5 marks. Alright, let's move on to the final question. Alright, so the final question we can see is figure 4 shows a sketch part of the curve C with equation y equals f of x, where f of x is equivalent to brackets 3x minus 2 square root brackets x minus 4. Deduce the values of x for which f of x is greater than 0. So, the first step is we got to find out what happens if x is greater than 0. F of x is greater than 0. What we're going to do is we're going to just factorize this at first. So we're going to write down the equation f of x is equivalent to 3x minus 2 square root x minus 4. When we expand this, we're going to expand this individually. 3x minus 2 square root x minus 4, all equivalent to 0. So you're going to get x value in this case as 2 by 3 if you expand it, and x value to be as 4. So this is going to become 2 by 3 comma 0, since the y value is 0, and it's going to become 4 comma 0. So indirectly we know that this should be greater than 4, since we know these 2 points now, that the point here, this is going to become 2 by 3 comma 0, and the point here is going to become 4 comma 0. Indirectly we can see that it shows deduce the values for which f of x should be greater than 0. It should be greater than 4 in this case, since the value is touching this point over here. It should be greater than 4, so that's going to be your answer for about, let's say, A. This is A should be, x should be greater than 4. Alright, let's move on to the next question, B. Next question, B, is expand f of x to form this. So this is mainly just expansion, and by the way, remember, we have to make A, B, C, and D. they're integers. We have to convert them into integers, so that means we have to multiply the whole equation by a certain value to make them integers. So we're just going to write down this equation again. Alright, so we're going to write down this equation again. F of x is equivalent to 3x minus 2 squared x minus 4. This is the equation on the top of the question. All we need to do is now expand this. Hopefully you guys know how to do expansion. 3x minus 2 brackets 3x minus 2 brackets x minus 4. We're going to expand these brackets first. So indirectly we're going to get f of x is equivalent to 9x squared minus 12x plus 4 brackets x minus 4. We're going to expand this again. So we get f of x is equivalent to, your final answer should be roughly about 9x cubed minus 48x squared plus 52x minus 16. This should be your final value. Since we know all of them are in integers, thankfully they're all in integers, so we don't need to multiply anything. We know the value of a to be 9. That's the value of a. And we know the value of b to be about negative 48. We know the value of c to be 52. The value of d to be negative 16. This is going to be answer. Just mention that this is the equation. And just mention the values of a, b, c, d, just in case. Just for safe sides. Now, C. Using algebra, alright, so there's a portion on top. The line L, also shown in figure 4, passes through the y-intercept, okay, of C and is parallel to the x-axis. The line L cuts C again at points P and Q, also shown in figure 4. Using algebra and showing your working, find the length of PQ. Write your answer in the form k squared 3, where k is a constant to be found. Okay, so what we have to do is we have found out our factorized equation in this case, how it looks like, and it is becoming this one. So we're just going to mention that f of x is equivalent to 9x cubed minus 48x squared plus 52x minus 16. We're just going to write that equation at first, and we're going to find out the value of y. Actually, in this case, we're going to find out the value of y. So to find out the value of y, we have to put x as 0. So it's going to be y is equivalent to 9, 0 raised to the power 3 minus 48, 0 squared plus 52 bracket 0 minus 16. So y indirectly becomes negative 16 for the coordinates 0, negative 16. So that means on the diagram, if you look, we can mention that line L is y is equivalent to negative 16. This is line L on this case. So y is equivalent to negative 16 with the coordinates 0, negative 16. So if we have found out our y value in this case, then all we need to do is, using the same equation, right, we're going to find out the values of x and equate this. Since this is y, f of x is just another way of saying y. So we know y is equivalent to 9x cubed minus 48x squared plus 52x minus 16. We're going to use the value of y to be negative 16 is equivalent to 9x cubed minus 48x squared plus 52x negative 16. If we bring it on the other side, they indirectly cancel out each other. So 9x cubed minus 48. Now all I'm doing is just rearranging this equation. Negative 16 plus 16 is equivalent to 0. I'm just rearranging all of this again. So if you do this, these two are just going to cancel out. So you get 9x cubed minus 48x squared plus 52x is equivalent to 0. Now this is a cubic equation. By the way, there is a way to solve cubic equations on your calculator. You just need to use the same way you do quadratic equations. So you're going to get x values to be about 8 plus 2 squared 3 divided by 3. Your other x value to be about 8 minus 2 squared 3 divided by 3. And your other value is going to become 0. So we're not going to use the value which is here, x3. Since we have to find out the distance, we know p's value of x. We know p's value in here to be about 8 plus square 3 divided by 3, I think, in this case. Oh, actually, we have to check which one's which. So we have to write this down in terms of decimal notation to see which one's where. So this is 3.821, and the other one is with a negative 8 minus 2 squared 3 divided by 3. That other one is 1.51. Okay, so the one with the positive, that means this is going to become 3 plus this is going to become 8 plus 2 squared 3 divided by 3, and this is going to become 8 minus 2 squared 3 divided by 3. Since that's the lower value, all we need to do is now, to find out the distance of PQ, all we need to do is just subtract these values. Subtract Q and P together, alright? So what I mean by is, if we scroll here, your distance PQ, that's going to become distance PQ, which is going to become, let's just reload the system again. Distance PQ, it's going to become 8 plus 2 squared 3 divided by 3 minus 8 minus 2 squared 3 divided by 3. This is going to give you 4 squared 3 divided by 3, which we can simplify to be about the distance PQ. That's equivalent to 4 by 3 squared 3. Let's just check what notation is the question asking us to write it in. It should be in terms of k squared 3, so this should be acceptable, I think, for your answers as well. In this case, let me just check again. Where is this? This is question 8, right? Since this is question 8, we have to just check if this is the correct way. Yeah, you can write 4 by 3 squared 3. This should be acceptable. In this case, this can be your answer. All right, the value of k is 4 by 3, so it should be all right. Okay, this is the distance. Let's move on to the next question. Wait, oh, there's another question. All right, so question 9 is integration question. So do keep in mind how to solve integration. So this is going to be total marks for about, let's say, how many marks is this totally? This is 11 marks. This seems to be the final question. All right, so find the integration form of this. By the way, I've made a video on integration, so if you guys want to check it out, check it out. 3x plus 2 squared divided by 4x raised to the power half. If you do this, you're just going to simplify all of this to give you 9x squared plus 12x plus 4 divided by 4x half. Now what you need to do is now start splitting this up in terms of its powers. Plus 12x divided by 4x raised to the power half plus 4 divided by 4x half. Once you do that, once you split these terms individually, you're going to get 9 by 4 x raised to the power 2 minus half. That's indirectly going to give you 3 by 2 plus 12 divided by 4 is 3x raised to the power half plus x minus half. Since you're putting it on top, 4 times 4 divided by 4 is just, all I'm doing is just simplification, guys. So this is just simplifying it all in terms of its powers. Now once you do this, you're going to integrate this. So we're going to add the powers by 1 and you're going to divide it by the new power. That's a rule of integration. So what I mean by is 9x raised to the power 3 by 2 plus 1. You're going to divide it by the new power, 3 by 2 plus 1, plus 3x raised to the power half plus 1 divided by the new power, half plus 1, plus x raised to the power negative half plus 1 divided by the new power again, negative half plus 1. Now once you simplify all of this, you should be getting your final answer to be about 9 by 10 x raised to the power 5 by 2 plus 2x raised to the power 3 by 2 plus 2x raised to the power half. By the way, add the c. Remember to add the c. C plus c just represents the constant of integration. That's the most important part of integration when you're dealing with that. Now we're just going to write this down in nice notation form. So 3x plus 2 squared divided by 4 squared x dx is going to become equivalent to 9 by 10 x raised to the power 5 by 2 plus 2x raised to the power 3 by 2 plus 2x raised to the power half plus c. This is going to become your final answer for about 5 marks. Hopefully you guys have understood how to do the integration part. Do add c plus c. Is very important. That's a constant of integration. Alright, let's move on to the second question, part 2. What does part 2 state? The part 2 states that curve c has equation y equals f of x. Given that f of x is equivalent to x squared plus ax plus b, where a and b are constants, the y-intercept of c is given to be about negative 8. Point p is also given, and the gradient of c is given. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down all the values, of course. So y is equivalent to f of x. We know the y-intercept of c to be about y-intercept of c is negative 8. We know the dy over dx expression is x squared plus ax plus b. By the way, all of these I'm getting it from the question itself, from above. Once you do that, and we know that point p, it lies 3,2 lies on c. And we know x is equivalent to 3 and y is equivalent to negative 2, and we know the gradient as well. We know the gradient of c at p is 2. Alright, so we know that the value is 2. Now what you're going to do is, since we know what the gradient is, we know what the x value is, we're going to use the x value and the gradient, and we're going to substitute both these values into this differentiated form. So it's going to be 3 squared plus 3a plus b is equivalent to 2. Once you do that, you're going to get a final value, or let's say you're going to rearrange this. Let me just check how to rearrange this in this form. So we're going to rearrange it and get our final answer to be roughly about 3a plus b plus 7 is equivalent to 0. Once you rearrange all this, you're going to get a equation like this. Now we have to find out the other part of the equation. So the other part of the equation is when you integrate it, by the way, when you integrate x squared plus ax plus b dx, you're going to get a value of x raised to the power 2 plus 1 divided by power 2 plus 1 plus ax raised to the power 1 plus 1 divided by 1 plus 1 plus bx plus c, the constant integration. Now when you integrate this, you're going to get a final answer of y is equivalent to x raised to the power 3 divided by 3 plus ax raised to the power 2 divided by 2 plus bx minus 8. Now the reason why c is written minus 8 is because we know the y-intercept of c is negative 8. So we're just going to substitute that value over there. Okay, so now once you do that, we have to find out what the value of a and b is again. So we know x and y coordinates. It's 3 comma negative 2. Again, we got this again from point P itself. So all we know x is 3, we know y is negative 2. All we need to do is just substitute this back into the equation. So you get a final equation of 9 by 2a plus 3b plus 3 is equivalent to 0 if you substitute it into. So indirectly we found out two equations. Now we can find out the value of a and b using simultaneous methods, either using the elimination method or the substitution method. It just matters on your choice. 3a plus b is equivalent to negative 7. Now the reason why I've written down like this was since it's easier to equate it in that form. So 9 by 2a plus 3b is equivalent to negative 3. All I've done is just push the positive 3 on the other side. And since we have to make this all equivalent to each other, we're going to multiply the top equation by 3. So it's going to give us a new equation of about 9a plus 3b is equivalent to negative 21. 9 by 2a plus 3b is equivalent to negative 3. This is going to be our elimination method technique. If you subtract this, you're going to cut out these b's. And you're going to have 9 by 2a is equivalent to negative 21 minus negative 3 is going to become negative 18. Indirectly, you're going to find out the value of a to be about negative 4. This is going to be a value of a. Now you're going to substitute the value of a back into this equation. So 3 brackets negative 4 plus b is equivalent to negative 7. Indirectly, you're going to find out the value of b to be about 5. Since we know the value of a and b now, all we need to do is just substitute this back into the equation. So you get f of x is equivalent to 1 by 3 x raised to the power of 3. So that's the original equation. Yeah, we're going to substitute it back into this equation over here. Plus minus, so it's going to become plus negative 4 divided by 2x squared plus 5x minus 8. Indirectly, this all becomes, since we have substituted the value of b and a into this equation over here on the top, a and b, we have to, of course, simplify this. So you're going to get 1 by 3 x raised to the power 3 minus 2x squared plus 5x minus 8. This is going to be your final answer. So f of x is going to become equivalent to 1 by 3 x raised to the power 3 minus 2x raised to the power 2 plus 5x minus 8. So this is going to be your final answer for about 6 marks. Okay, so that's I'm just going to write this down properly so you guys can see that. Okay. Alright, so this seems to be the end of all the questions. If you guys have seems to be, let me just check. Yeah, this seems to be the end of all the questions. If you guys have enjoyed the video, please do like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps a lot. And new content will be posted soon. Do comment down below on what your thoughts are about this video as well. And this video is going to be posted in the December season playlist along with the trailers and the music videos, so do check that out. And yeah, I think that's it. Alright, bye guys.